a clear blue sky over the open ocean. Beneath the surface, manta rays glide through the deep blue waters. Everything looks peaceful as schools of fish drift by. The rocky seafloor is quiet and desolate. A crab creeps up on a starfish, looking for an easy meal. Another crab steps in and they start clashing claws over the food. They suddenly freeze up, startled by a shadow coming from above. A woman dives down, sending the crabs scuttling away into the rocks. She looks determined as she scans the underwater terrain. This is the red-haired woman, moving gracefully through the water despite her tattered dress. She checks her surroundings to make sure she's alone. She swims toward a dark, narrow crevice tucked away in the reef. After inspecting the cave, she decides it's the right spot. She gives a small smile, satisfied with the location. Light from the surface filters down through the schools of fish above. Deep in the shadows of the rock, small bubbles rise. She begins securing clusters of white, translucent egg sacs to the stone walls. The sacs pulse with a faint, eerie glow. She settles into the cave, prepared to watch over her charge. A pair of large fish swim past the entrance, sensing something new. They have wide, empty eyes and rows of sharp teeth. The red-haired woman tenses up and glares, telling them to get lost. She screams at them to stay away from the cave. She bares her teeth, showing she's not to be messed with. But then her stomach lets out a loud, hunger-filled growl. She looks exhausted, clearly having been down here for a long time. A large shrimp scuttles across the seafloor just outside. She starts drooling at the sight of a potential meal. More small fish swim past, but she can't leave her post to hunt. The larger predators keep circling around, waiting for her to slip up so they can pounce and devour the tiny eggs she is guarding. She stays silent, keeping her eyes fixed on the entrance. Her hunger only grows as another creature scuttles past. A whole month has passed, and she's still sitting in the same spot. By day 30, the egg sacs are glowing more vibrantly than ever. She touches them gently, checking on the life inside. Inside the sacs, human-like embryos are starting to take shape. She smiles, realizing her journey is reaching its end as theirs begins. Their lives have been connected from the very start. Her expression turns heavy as she looks down. She thinks back to the man who put her on this path. She remembers the blonde man holding her close as they sank into the depths together. He gave her a final, gentle smile, promising to give her everything he had left. The blonde man pulls her close, their faces only inches apart in the quiet blue. He shares his final breath with her, a silent vow of life and protection. Back in the present, the red-haired woman gently touches one of the pulsating egg sacs. She watches the tiny human-like embryos inside, her expression filled with a quiet sadness. She sits alone in the dark cave, realizing that the man she loved is long gone. Deep in the ocean trench, she is the only thing standing between these lives and the abyss. 60 days have passed, and the cave is her entire world. Her eyes are heavy with exhaustion as she remains on guard. The embryos are growing larger, their tiny forms clearly visible through the translucent membranes. She touches the sacs again, feeling the faint movement of life within. Her gaze is intense, fixed on the precious cargo she's sworn to protect. She points toward the entrance, sensing a change in the water's current. A small, solitary fish swims past, a brief flicker of movement in the stillness. Suddenly, the fish darts away, spooked by something larger lurking nearby. She tenses up, her purple eyes widening in alarm. She retreats further into the shadows of the rock formation, baring her teeth. 100 days have passed, and she is becoming skeletal, her red hair turning a pale silver white. She hunches over, her body frail and emaciated from the long months of starvation. Something startles her, and she looks up with a sharp gasp. The egg sacs pulse with a bright, urgent light above her. She tries to regain her composure, staying close to the embryos. But she hears a low, rhythmic sound echoing through the cave. She looks toward the entrance, her eyes filled with terror. A massive, dark shape begins to block out the faint light from the reef. She begs for the strength to fight, even though her body is failing her. She desperately hopes the intruder will just leave them alone. The eel monster looms at the cave's mouth, its eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. It glides into the sanctuary, its massive body rippling through the water. The monster circles above, its movements fluid and menacing. She lets out a silent, pained cry, clutching her frail body. The monster lunges, its jaws snapping close to her. It towers over her, its rows of sharp teeth on full display. She stares up at the beast, paralyzed by fear and weakness. The eel monster opens its mouth wide, ready to swallow everything in the cave. She screams and tries to fend off the massive head with her bare hands. The creature lunges again, snapping at the very rocks she's hiding behind. She lets out a final, desperate shriek as the beast's jaws close in on the egg sacs. Bubbles and debris cloud the water as the struggle continues in the darkness. 150 days have passed, and the sanctuary has gone quiet once more. The infants inside the sacs have matured, their eyes now open and alert. The red-haired woman is barely more than a shadow of her former self, her hair completely white. Her eyes are dim, her life force nearly drained by the grueling sacrifice she has made. The red-haired woman gazes at the brown-haired infant still encased in its glowing orb. The baby reaches out with tiny hands, pressing against the membrane. She reaches out a trembling, scarred hand to touch the sac. Inside, the baby closes its eyes and smiles, feeling its mother's presence. She smiles back through her tears, her face weary but full of love. Her body is now nothing more than a dry skeleton, her tattered dress hanging loosely off her emaciated frame, and one of her legs had been taken by the monster fish long ago. She remains in the cave, the white egg sacs draped around her like a floral shroud. Day 180 arrives, and the infant begins to struggle against its prison. With a sudden burst, the membrane tears open. The baby swims out into the open water, joined by countless others. The child's eyes go wide as it takes in the vast ocean for the first time. It is a world of endless blue and shimmering magical light, but their mother is now just a body that no longer emits any life force. The child stares blankly at its mother, but there is no reaction at all. She knows that the sea is a cruel place and many will not survive. Yet, she hopes that some will endure to carry on the spark of light. Thousands of tiny forms drift through the water like stars. She gives her final blessing, her heart filled with a mother's love. Her eyes slowly close as her spirit finally finds peace. The newborn creatures are swept up in a great, swirling current. They rise toward the light, leaving the darkness of the trench behind. The brown-haired infant looks back one last time. Its mother lies motionless, her silver hair drifting like seaweed in the current. A large predatory fish darts past, indifferent to the tragedy in the cave. The child is alone now, a tiny speck in the infinite ocean. It turns away, following the others into the unknown. Bubbles rise from the depths, marking the end of one journey and the start of another. The sun shines down on the coral reefs, oblivious to the loss below. The red-haired woman lies still as the story of her life and death begins to unfold. The octopus mother has fulfilled her duty, protecting her children without sleep or food for 180 days, and giving life to the new brood with her very own life. And through this story, we can look at the entire animal world through their very own eyes. The sea is teeming with life, a vibrant tapestry of predator and prey. A large fish lunges for a meal, the law of the deep in action. Far above, a school of fish swims toward the shimmering surface. The sky is a brilliant blue, filled with the cries of circling gulls. Beyond the shore, a lush green valley unfolds beneath snow-capped peaks. A clear river winds through the forest, its waters sparkling in the sunlight. Salmon leap from the rushing water, driven by an ancient instinct. Suddenly, a hand plunges into the stream and snatches a fish from the air. Quetta bites into the raw flesh, blood staining his lips and chin. He eats with a savage intensity, his red eyes focused and alert. A sudden splash nearby catches his attention, and he freezes. A massive brown bear wades into the river, eyeing the intruder on its territory. The brown bear let out a thunderous roar, its jaws wide and teeth bared in a fierce challenge. Quetta met the beast's gaze with a chillingly calm smile, his face still smeared with blood from his meal. Behind him, a sea of glowing eyes emerged from the shadows as a pack of wolves began to surround the riverbed. An intense aura flared around Quetta, his red eyes burning with a predatory fire that mirrored the savage hunger within him. The massive bear hesitated, its expression shifting from aggression to a flicker of primal confusion. "My name is Quetta," he declared, standing firm in the shallow water as the pack gathered behind their leader. The wolves waded into the stream, their growls a low, menacing chorus that echoed through the sun-drenched forest. With red eyes reflecting the ferocity of the wolf pack, Quetta coldly declared, "I am a wolf." In a quieter part of the woods, a solitary elk stood by a crystal-clear pool, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. It lowered its head to drink, the surface of the water rippling gently as it enjoyed a peaceful moment. Suddenly, the animal's ears twitched as a sharp sound broke the silence of the glade. The elk looked up, its eyes wide with alarm as it sensed a predator closing in from the brush. A rustle in the tall grass was the only warning before a blur of movement erupted into the open. Quetta launched himself through the air with savage speed, his hands outstretched like claws as he closed the distance. The elk let out a startled cry, instantly dodging Quetta's pounce. Quetta hit the ground and skidded through the grass, his teeth bared in a snarl of frustration. The chase was on as the elk bolted through the meadow with Quetta hot on its heels. "Yua!" he screamed, his voice a wild, guttural roar that echoed the calls of the pack. With a desperate leap, Quetta lunged forward and sank his teeth deep into the elk's muscular hind leg. The elk's eyes flared with pain and shock, its instincts screaming as the predator took hold. The animal didn't stop, dragging Quetta across the rough earth as it continued its mad dash for freedom. "Ugh! He won't stop," Quetta grunted, his face bloodied as he clung to the thrashing prey with everything he had. He narrowed his eyes, his focus narrowing down to the singular, primal goal of bringing the beast down. This guy's strength is way too high, he realized, just as a powerful kick sent him tumbling backwards into the air. Quetta locks eyes with his prey, teeth bared as he prepares to strike. He lunges forward, but the elk is already a blur of movement. He starts sprinting after it, yelling for the animal to just stop and listen for a second. He begs the beast to just turn into meat for him today, promising he'll never chase it again if it just lets him eat. He's not giving up, shouting that there's nowhere the elk can run to hide from him. He lets out a feral roar, vowing to chase it to the very ends of the earth. Suddenly, a massive blow catches him right in the head mid-stride. The impact sends him crashing into the grass, blood spraying from the force of the hit. He hits the ground hard, letting out a pained scream. Dazed and bleeding, he looks up through the red haze to see who just wrecked him. A massive, bearded man towers over him, looking totally unimpressed. He tells the scrawny wolf to get lost, claiming he won't be taken down by a pup like him. Quetta snaps back, furious that anyone would dare talk to a wolf that way. The big man just starts walking toward him, asking if he really wants another piece. The man identifies himself as the elk king of this region. He asks if Quetta even realized he was trespassing in Murim pack territory. He sighs, calling Quetta a completely clueless stray who just left the den. Quetta looks confused, having never heard of these rulers before. The king explains that the pack is infamous for hunting down and killing any wolf that invades their land. He mentions that another stray just like Quetta wandered in only a few days ago. It didn't take the pack long at all to sniff the intruder out. They left him as a mangled corpse, chewed down to the bone and torn to shreds. The brutal description hits home, and Quetta's bravado starts to flicker. The king laughs, telling him that looking as dumb as he does, he'll be dead in 3 days tops. The big man mocks Quetta, asking if his voice is starting to tremble now. Quetta yells back that he's not scared of them at all, insisting he's the strongest wolf around. He keeps shouting, claiming that even if he's alone right now, nobody is stronger than him. He demands that the elk king remember his name clearly. He stands tall, blood dripping down his face, and finally gives his name, Quetta. There's a long, tense silence as the elk king just stares him down. Then the king delivers a crude insult about what he'll do to Quetta's corpse. Quetta screams in frustration as his prey finally trots away into the distance. He's left alone in the grass, his stomach growling loud enough for him to feel it. The reality of his situation sinks in. He is absolutely starving. He looks up at the vast, empty sky, feeling completely hopeless. He collapses face down in the dirt, actually starting to sob from the hunger. He mumbles that he should have been born an elk instead of a starving wolf. But then, his nose twitches as he catches the faint, intoxicating scent of rotting blood. His eyes widen as he realizes what that smell definitely means. He follows the scent through the grass and spots a boot hitting the ground. A girl in a yellow raincoat suddenly sprints past him. Quetta catches a glimpse of Yen's face, and she looks just as desperate as he is. Quetta's eyes widen in surprise as he spots a girl standing in the middle of nowhere. The girl introduces herself as Yen, flashing a cheerful grin and claiming to be a good-natured stray wolf, just following the clouds. She tries to act casual, saying she was just passing through and definitely wasn't trying to invade his territory. Quetta mentions he's a stray too and gives his name, but Yen starts sweating and shouting that she's just passing by. She stops dead in her tracks and asks if he's really not part of the Murim pack. When he confirms he's a stray from the eastern mountains, she looks like she doesn't entirely believe him. Suddenly, she lunges and grabs his collar, screaming that he scared the living crap out of her. She eventually lets go and tells him they should just go their separate ways and never see each other again. Despite her big talk, a few minutes later, they're both walking down the same path in total silence. Quetta asks why she's following him, but she just snaps back that she was already heading this way. Quetta thinks to himself that there's no way she hasn't picked up on the smell yet. Yen's thinking the exact same thing, annoyed that this other guy caught the scent too. They both pick up the pace, determined to be the first one to reach whatever is waiting ahead. Quetta can smell it clearly now, the metallic scent of blood and old, rotting bones. They find the source, a massive carcass being picked over by birds and a hungry coyote. Quetta doesn't hesitate, charging in and telling the scavengers to get lost and move out of the way. He skids to a halt, cursing when he realizes the kill is mostly just a pile of dry bones. Before he can even think, Yen tackles him from behind, screaming that the find is hers and hers alone. She's so desperate for food she starts licking the bones, hoping to get even a drop of marrow. Quetta grabs her by the hair to pull her off, and she lets out a shrill scream of rage. She kicks him away, telling him to screw off so she can at least have what's left in the bones. She lunges again, but this time she sinks her teeth right into Quetta's neck, sending blood spraying. Dazed and bleeding, Quetta can't believe this crazy bitch actually went for his throat. He pins her to the ground in a fury, asking if she's really ready to start a fight to the death. He warns her to back off if she wants to live, since his 3-day hunger has him in a lethal mood. But staring at her face triggers something deep in his mind, a memory he thought he'd buried. A memory he thought he'd buried. He sees a girl with a white streak in her hair, her eyes wide with a mix of terror and rage. The memory shifts to her face covered in blood, her expression twisting into one of pure agony as she gasps for air. She screams for him to run as a pack of massive black wolves starts closing in on them. The wolves are savage beasts, their eyes glowing with a cold, predatory light. The pack catches her, their teeth sinking into her flesh as she lets out a blood-curdling scream. Young Quetta can only watch in horror as his mother is literally torn apart right in front of him. He froze in place, unable to move as the wolves continued their brutal execution on the body of his younger sister standing right beside him. Her screams echo through the air while the pack starts their horrific feast. In her final moments, the little girl reached out her blood-soaked hand, desperately begging Quetta to save her. Her face was smeared with tears and fresh blood as she gasped his name one last time, holding on to a faint hope for a miracle. Quetta is just a kid, paralyzed and hearing his name called out for the very last time. He can only stare through his tears, the trauma of the scene burning into his memory forever. Back in the present, Yen screaming at him to let go, her voice finally snapping him out of his trance. She doesn't stop, biting him again with everything she's got while he's still pinning her down. She shoves him off and stands her ground, shouting that his 3 days of hunger are nothing compared to her 5. Quetta wipes the blood from his face, his expression turning murderous as he tells her she really must want to die. The wolf guy finally went completely crazy, leaping at the girl and skinning her alive to exact revenge for the wound on his ear. Meanwhile, the coyote they chased off just stands there in total silence, watching two supposedly fearsome strays brawl like toddlers over a pile of dry bones. While Quetta and Yen are still going at it in the background, the scavenger from earlier decides to take its chances and creeps back to the carcass. It doesn't waste a second, snatching up a bone and preparing to bolt before the two terrifying wolves notice it. The little guy trots away happily, literally humming a tune as it makes off with the prize while Quetta and Yen are still busy fighting over nothing but air. Even the local wildlife can tell something is wrong. A scavenger stops mid-chew, looking around with a confused expression. The creature lets out a startled yelp and drops its bone, sensing a new, far more dangerous presence nearby. Quetta and Yen's bitter scrap comes to an abrupt halt as they both spin around, alerted by the sound of heavy footsteps. Yen's face pales and she breaks into a cold sweat, her earlier bravado completely vanishing in an instant. Looking up at the ridge, they realize they're surrounded. The Murakotasha pack has arrived, led by their hulking, scarred leader with Murako right by his side. Quetta and Yen's standoff is cut short as they both sense something approaching, their heads snapping toward the new threat. A group of strangers has surrounded them, led by a massive bald man with a scar across his head and a girl with a very smug expression. The man is the Murakotasha leader, and he looks like he's about 2 seconds away from tearing them both apart. Beside him stands Tasha, watching the two strays with a cold, mocking smile that says they're in way over their heads. Quetta tries to be polite, asking if he can help them with anything, but Yen screams at him to shut up because they're facing the Murakotasha pack. The leader isn't interested in talking. He roars at his people to catch the intruders and kill them both where they stand. The pack moves as one, with several of them charging forward and shouting their loyalty to their leader. Yen doesn't wait around to be captured, letting out a scream and telling Quetta they need to run for their lives right now. They both bolt, sprinting through a gap in the trees as the sounds of the pack's pursuit echo behind them. It's a desperate race down the dirt path, with Quetta and Yen trying to outrun a whole mob of killers who are hot on their heels. The big guy leading the pack, the Murakotasha leader, isn't letting up, charging forward and screaming that the intruders won't get away. Quetta's already at his limit, bleeding from the bite Yen gave him and wondering just how long these guys plan on chasing them. He spots a lake up ahead and figures they'll be safe once they cross it, though his own stamina is fading fast. He turned back to look at Yen and urged her to drag herself all the way to that body of water, pushing her to run just a little bit further. Yen is barely keeping it together, her breath coming in ragged gasps as her strength finally gives out. Quetta realizes how close their pursuers are and yells at her to hurry before they're caught. But it's too late. The Murakotasha leader's massive hand reaches out, catching Yen by the back of the head. He slams her face first into the dirt with a brutal force that sends a sickening thud through the air. Tasha and the rest of the pack catch up, the leader praising her for the assist as they prepare to finish the job. Quetta watches in horror, knowing that if the whole pack pounces at once, they'll be torn to shreds in seconds. The scene starts to blur with his memories as the leader looms over Yen, and Quetta hears a familiar, desperate cry for help. Panic takes over and Quetta turns to bolt, telling himself he's not about to die right here alongside her. Pinned down and helpless, Yen looked up with tearful eyes, while Quetta whispered an apology to the she-wolf for not being able to help her. The fading image of his mother and younger sister's dying faces flashed before his eyes once more, their tearful, "I'm sorry," echoing hauntingly in his mind. Quetta keeps running, his own voice joining the echoes as he screams an apology to the girl he's leaving behind. He grits his teeth, his expression twisting in a mix of self-loathing and the sheer instinct to survive. The Murakotasha leader stands over Yen, his face set in a murderous grin as he tells her it's time to die. He prepares to deliver the final blow, his eyes wide with the cold thrill of the kill. But out of nowhere, Quetta comes flying back, delivering a massive kick that sends the leader reeling. With his eyes glowing a dangerous red, Quetta stands his ground as Yen gasps out his name in pure shock. The sky turns heavy over the distant mountains. Quetta lunged forward and pinned the alpha wolf to the ground. He screams for her to run while he still has the big guy's attention. Yen is paralyzed with fear, her eyes wide as she watches him struggle. She finally turns tail and sprints away into the darkness. The bald leader just grins, promising to tear Quetta to pieces. Quetta tried to fight back, but the other guy grabbed him by the hair and pinned him down. The leader leans his full weight into him, telling him to stop wasting his energy. He leans in close, eyes burning with a sadistic light. Quetta manages to grab the guy's collar, refusing to go out quietly. He puts everything he has into a counterattack, even if it means dying together. Suddenly, he stops, catching something out of the corner of his eye. A whole group of shadows leaps from the trees toward him. Tasha leads the charge, looking like a wild animal ready to feed. In the distance, Yen was still running as fast as her legs could carry her, but the thought of leaving him there to die starts to eat at her. She skids to a stop and looks up, sensing a shift in the wind. Her nose twitches as the scent of an approaching storm hits her. The clouds above have turned into a massive, swirling void. She turns back toward the fight with a determined look on her face. Back at the clearing, Quetta is getting absolutely mauled. Tasha lunges in and sinks her teeth deep into his neck. He's slammed into the mud as the rest of the pack closes in for the kill. Bloodied and broken, Quetta realizes this might be the end of the line. He watches his attackers through hazy eyes, losing the strength to move. Then, a familiar voice rings out across the battlefield. Yen screams at him not to give up, her voice cracking with desperation. She's charging straight back into the fray, ignoring the danger. Quetta yells for her to stay away, terrified she'll die right alongside him. But she doesn't slow down for a second. She crashes into the attackers, desperate to reach him. A group of massive wolves steps out of the shadows, surrounding the both of them. They're completely cornered by the beasts, with nowhere left to run. Quetta thinks they're finished, but Yen just tells him to brace himself. She shouts that it's finally here, and he needs to hold on. He looks up, confused, until the first shard of ice hits the ground. Huge chunks of hail start falling from the black sky like artillery. The storm erupts, slamming giant ice spikes into the earth all around them. The wolves get caught in the barrage, yelping as the ice pummels them. One of the beasts takes a direct hit and collapses instantly. The distraction is perfect as the pack scatters to find cover from the hail. Yen grabs his arm and screams for him to jump now while they have the chance. Quetta takes a deep breath, pushing through the chaos. Yen and Quetta bolted for their lives while the pack lost track of them to reorganize their formation. The whole pack started giving chase, but the hailstones kept pelting down relentlessly. Ice shards slammed into the mud, driving the pack to blindly chase after the two stray wolves. Yen and Quetta didn't care about any of that, charging straight ahead through the blinding hail. The water's edge was right in front of them. Yen bared her teeth and growled. Her way out of this mess was right in front of her. Quetta's eyes were filled with absolute determination. The two of them had just pulled off a truly spectacular escape. In the confusion, they managed to dive straight into the churning water. They tread water, watching the shoreline as they drift away. The rest of the pack can only watch from the mud, unable to follow. The leaders just stand there, looking pretty salty that their dinner got away. The duo keeps swimming, the vast ocean opening up before them. Deep below, the local sea life doesn't seem to care about the drama on the surface. Quetta asks how she even knew a storm like that was coming. Yen just says she's been through enough of these to recognize the signs by smell alone. He's still confused why she'd actually risk her life to come back for him. Lighting rips through the sky, turning the dark water bright for a second. Quetta finally lets out a sincere thank you for not leaving him behind. She just rolls her eyes, joking that she definitely didn't come back to die with him. But then her face softens, and she starts talking about her past. She admits that her first instinct is always to run away and hide. She watched her entire family get taken out right in front of her eyes. Back then, she chose her own life over everything else. But now she wonders if things could have been different if she'd stayed. She suggests they stick together for a bit longer, since they make a good team. Quetta is caught off guard by the suggestion. He starts thinking about his own past, back when things were simpler. He remembers a time when being part of a pack meant there was nothing to fear. The idea of actually having someone to watch his back starts to sound pretty good. He tells her he's the muscle and she's the brains, so it might just work. Anything is better than trying to survive in this hellhole all by himself. He smiles and asks if she's really in, but a sudden roar from the ocean cuts him off. Lightning strikes the water right next to them, sending a massive shock through the sea. The current swept them apart before they even knew it, and Quetta frantically began shouting Yen's name. He rolled his eyes around to look, but there was nobody in sight. He shouts her name over the sound of the crashing storm, but there's no answer. The surging waves swallowed him whole as he was dragged further away from the shore. The storm rages on, leaving nothing but dark water and rain behind. A little animal pops its head up on a nearby beach, watching the tide. Quetta's body finally washes up, looking more like a piece of driftwood than a wolf. He's alive, but he's alone again, and the girl is nowhere to be found. Quetta sits by the shoreline, the weight of the silence hitting him hard. He stares out at the water, half hoping to see a familiar yellow raincoat bobbing in the waves. He checks the soft mud along the bank, but there are no tracks and no scent to be found. The frustration starts to boil over as he realizes he's completely on his own. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, he wonders if Yen even made it across. He collapses onto the sand, his energy and hope both running on empty. It's happening again, that familiar, hollow feeling of being left behind. He closes his eyes, cursing the fact that he's always the only one who survives. Suddenly, his eyes snap open as he notices a set of fresh tracks leading away from the water. Large, deep paw prints are pressed firmly into the damp earth. He leans down and catches a faint, familiar smell. It's Yen's scent, and she's definitely alive. Without a second thought, he starts crawling forward, his tracking instincts taking over. He pauses, catching a whiff of something else, the scent of another male nearby. The trail leads deep into the misty woods, and the metallic tang of blood fills the air. His mind flashes with a terrifying image of Yen being hunted down by a stranger. He breaks into a sprint, wondering if the Murakotasha pack really followed them this far. He comes to a sudden halt, his eyes fixed on a disturbed patch of ground. Broken branches and scuffed dirt tell a clear story of a violent struggle. He can almost see it, Yen being grabbed and dragged away into the darkness. A smear of fresh blood on a leaf sends his heart racing with pure panic. He hears a muffled noise up ahead and his eyes glow with a predatory intensity. He lunges through the brush, his body moving like a blur through the trees. He clears a fallen log in a single leap, certain that his target is just ahead. Through the fog, he spots two figures grappling in the middle of the path. He roars Yen's name, throwing himself headlong into the fray. He screams at the stranger to get his hands off of her, his claws ready to tear. A teal-haired youth, Zaki, with a freckled nose and wary yellow eyes looks up in total shock. Quetta slams into him with the force of a freight train, knocking him clean off his feet. He pins the boy to the ground, his teeth bared as he threatens to end him right there. He turns his head frantically, calling out to see if Yen is alright. But the girl standing there has long silver hair and bright blue eyes. She's a total stranger. Quetta freezes, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. He stares at her face, finally seeing that this definitely isn't the girl he was looking for. The teal-haired youth, Zaki, isn't just going to sit there, he tackles Quetta right back. Zaki sinks his teeth into Quetta's neck, hitting the exact same wound from the earlier fight. Both of them go tumbling back into the dirt, groaning in pain and frustration. They scramble apart, both of them breathing hard and looking for an opening. Zaki stops for a second, noticing the messy bandages and old blood on Quetta's neck. Quetta just glares at him, stubbornly claiming that he's perfectly fine. Zaki isn't buying it and charges again, aiming a strike right at the weak spot. But he suddenly skids to a halt, looking down at the empty ground with a look of pure horror. He screams about his missing meat just as they both see the silver-haired girl making a run for it. The silver-haired woman gives a playful wink, a clear sign that she's got exactly what she came for. She clutches the white goose to her chest, looking back with a cool, mocking gaze at the chaos she's left behind. Zaki doesn't waste a second, bolting after her into the woods with a scream of pure rage. He's absolutely livid, yelling at the top of his lungs about how hard he worked to catch that bird. But Quetta isn't about to let him get away either, lunging forward and grabbing Zaki by the head to drag him back down. Zaki thrashes in the dirt, his eyes wide and desperate as he watches his dinner disappear into the trees. The full moon hangs high over the silent mountains, a cold witness to the two boys' struggle in the dark. Zaki sits on the ground, his head in his hands as the reality sinks in. He's lost his only meal for the night. He snaps at Quetta, blaming him for jumping in and helping the thief get away. His voice is shaking with frustration as he rants about how long it's been since he actually managed to hunt something. Quetta just stares at him, his face pale and eyes wide, his mind only on one thing. Zaki screams in his face, calling him a psycho and demanding to know who the hell this Yen person is. Quetta refuses to back down, pointing a finger and insisting that he can smell her scent on the other boy. Zaki stops his shouting, a look of realization crossing his face as he asks if Quetta means the girl. Quetta's face lights up with a rare, toothy grin as he starts describing Yen's age and appearance. Zaki nods along, matching every detail from the yellow jacket to the messy hair. They both start shouting in excitement, pointing at each other as they realize they're talking about the same person. But the joy is short-lived as the urgency of the situation hits Quetta again, and he demands to know where she is. Zaki explains that he found her earlier, unconscious and washed up near the lake. A flashback shows Zaki walking through the woods with his prize, only to stumble upon a small figure in a yellow raincoat. He had stared down at her, wondering for a split second if he'd found a dead wolf pup on the shore. He knelt beside her, checking for a pulse and breathing a sigh of relief when he saw she was still alive. But just as he was about to help her, the silver-haired woman burst out of the shadows with a look of predatory intent. Zaki startled and stepped back, completely caught off guard, thinking someone was charging in to attack him. He squeezed his eyes shut, bracing himself for the impact, but a moment passed and absolutely nothing happened. When he opened his eyes, his prey had vanished out of nowhere. Flashback to the chaos. Jackie was hot on the heels of a silver-haired woman darting through the brush. She's making off with his dinner, and he's not about to let a perfectly good goose get away without a fight. But his hunt was cut short when Quetta came out of nowhere and leveled him right in the middle of the chase. Back in the present, Quetta's got him by the collar, calling him out for abandoning a fellow wolf like that. Jackie shouts right back, demanding to know what some random girl has to do with him anyway. Quetta lets go, his frustration turning into pure desperation as he realizes he has no idea where to start looking. Jackie watches him, genuinely confused why this guy cares so much. He asks if she's his wife or something. Friend? Family? Quetta keeps shaking his head, which only makes Jackie even more baffled. To a loner like him, the idea of risking your life for a stranger is just plain insane. But Quetta looks him dead in the eye and tells him they survived together. The words catch Jackie off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless. He repeats the phrase to himself, like it's a concept his brain is struggling to process. He finally introduces himself as Jackie, and Quetta gives his own name back. Jackie decides to help, though he can't resist poking fun at Quetta for not being able to pick up her scent himself. Quetta's face lights up, he's finally found someone who can actually lead the way. Jackie tells him to move it, they need to catch the trail before the night cold washes away the scent memories. They both drop to the ground, Jackie leading the way through the thick brush of the dark forest. High above, an owl watches the two predators in training navigate the deep woods. They sprint under the full moon, pushing their limits to keep up with the fading trail. Suddenly, Jackie skids to a stop, his frustration boiling over as the scent completely vanishes. Quetta starts panicking again, but Jackie's had enough of following a trail that leads to a dead end. Quetta stares off into the dark, his mind already set on the only option they have left. Jackie looks at him like he's grown a second head when he realizes where Quetta is heading. He tries to stop him, warning that they're about to walk right into scary pack territory. He tells him they'll be swarmed, but Quetta isn't backing down. Quetta knows hiding won't work forever. If they're going to be hunted, they might as well move forward. He tells Jackie that sticking together is their only real shot at making it out alive. Jackie watches him go, thinking back to his life as a stray where it was always every wolf for himself. He wonders why that one word, together, is hitting him so hard right now. A single snowflake lands on his forehead, a cold reminder that time is running out. He gives a small, resigned smile, noticing how much the temperature has dropped. Winter is officially arriving, and it's not coming quietly. However, the wolf's sheer audacity in front of him left Jackie dumbfounded, as Quetta walked straight into the enemy pack's territory and lifted his head to let out a long howl. The forest begins to disappear under a heavy blanket of falling snow. Far from the shoreline, the mountains are swallowed by the freezing dark. Tucked away in the rocks, a single cave offers a grim shelter for those who know how to find it. Inside, the local power couple, Scar and Carrie, are keeping watch. Carrie looks bored, leaning back as she mentions they've got more intruders sniffing around tonight. She smiles, wondering if they're looking for the girl they spotted earlier. Outside in the blizzard, Yen keeps moving through the trees, completely unaware that she's already been found. Yen skids to a stop in the snow, her ears catching a faint sound. Quetta? Is he really out there? Deep in the woods, Quetta and Jackie pause, their heads tilted back as they search the air for any sign of her. They lock onto a direction, both of them looking completely focused on the hunt now. Jackie looks over at the younger boy, wondering what the next move is since they can't just stand here waiting forever. Suddenly, a sharp sound cuts through the freezing air, making them both jump out of their skin. They turn toward the source, eyes wide as they realize they aren't the only ones moving through the night. A lone wolf stands on a snow-covered log, letting out a long, haunting howl that echoes through the trees. That's all the confirmation Quetta needs. He takes off like a shot, certain that Yen is the one calling out. He screams her name into the night, his voice filled with a mix of desperate relief and pure terror. Meanwhile, Yen is tearing through the woods, her yellow raincoat flapping as she tries to reach him. She screams back, desperate for him to hear her, but she's running out of breath fast. She rounds a corner and skids to a dead stop, finding her path blocked by a group that definitely isn't friendly. Carrie smiles down at her, the red marks under her eyes looking even more sinister as she starts humming a twisted lullaby about a fawn and its mother. Beside her stands Scar, his stern face showing absolutely no mercy for the intruder in his territory. The rest of the scary pack watches on, their eyes filled with predatory amusement as the lullaby continues. The pack of wolves watched Yen with cold, calculating gazes, waiting to see what her next move would be. The pack members start closing in, Carrie's song promising that the pain will only last a moment before it's all over. Scar and Carrie walk forward together, an intimidating duo that clearly runs this neck of the woods. Yen can feel the walls closing in, her heart hammering against her ribs as the lullaby reaches its bloody end. A pack of wolves emerges from the shadows behind the humans, pinning her down with their hungry stares. Not far away, Quetta and Jackie are closing the distance, hoping they aren't too late to step in. But they both pull up short as the ground disappears beneath them at the cliff edge. They're standing above a massive cliff, a rushing river churning below them in the dark. Quetta doesn't hesitate for a second, diving down a steep, rocky path because there's no time to find a safer way. Jackie follows right behind him, though he looks like he's regretting every choice that led him here. Back in the clearing, Carrie is already mocking Yen, telling her that running in her state will only make things worse. Yen holds her ground, baring her teeth as she warns them not to come any closer if they want to avoid a fight. Carrie just laughs, asking the girl if she really thinks she can take on the entire pack all by herself. Scar steps forward, calling her rude for howling in their territory like she's the one in charge. But Yen isn't going down that easy, she fires back, asking them why they'd think she was out here all alone. She throws out a desperate bluff, claiming that her family is right on their way to back her up. Her mind is racing as she looks into their eyes, praying that Quetta is close enough to make her lie believable. Carrie finds the whole thing hilarious, laughing as she mentions they've already heard the howls from earlier. Scar stays silent for a moment, his nose catching a specific scent that he's all too familiar with. His eyes narrow as he whispers the name Murako, a name that clearly carries some heavy history for him. He remembers the brutal strength of that pack leader, and he can smell that same violence all over this girl. Yen sees the hesitation and realizes she might have actually found a way to save herself. She decides to lean into the lie, betting the scary pack will back off if they think she belongs to someone even more dangerous. She puts on her best smug face, mocking them for being so slow to figure out who they're dealing with. Yen started bluffing, claiming that the pack would soon be surrounded on all sides by her allies. Yen keeps the act up, mentioning how the Murakotasha pack has a lot of mouths to feed and they aren't picky eaters. She claims they've run short on prey in their own territory and might just be looking for some fresh meat. The pack members exchange worried glances, the mention of the Murakotasha pack clearly making them uneasy. Yen leans into the role, throwing her arms out as she offers them a choice, either risk their lives in a fight they can't win, or let her walk away right now. Scar stares at her, the pieces clicking into place in his mind as he realizes she must be the daughter of Murako and Tasha. Yen keeps up the smug act, warning them to decide fast because her family is already closing in on their location. Internally, she's cheering, convinced that she's finally gained the upper hand and can press her advantage to get out of this alive. But the plan backfires instantly as Scar's eyes ignite with a golden fury, his voice trembling with the need to finally avenge his son's death today. Yen's heart nearly stops as the realization hits her, she hasn't scared them off, she's just given them the perfect reason to kill her. Yen is running for her life through the rain with the scary pack closing in fast. Scar and Carrie lead the pursuit, looking like they're ready to tear her apart. She hits the edge of the cliff and slips, falling straight toward the ocean below. Her scream is swallowed by the wind as she tumbles down the jagged rock face. She slams into the water with a massive splash, sinking into the dark waves. Suddenly, Quetta is right there, pulling her head above the surface. Yen starts thrashing in a panic until she hears him tell her to calm down. She finally realizes who it is and can barely believe her eyes. Yen pulls Quetta into a tight hug, just relieved that she's not alone anymore. But the danger isn't over. She tells him they have to keep moving because the pack is right above them. They scramble through the surf and run straight into Zaki, who's just as confused as they are. Quetta doesn't waste time with introductions, yelling at the teal-haired boy to hurry up. High on the cliffside, the silhouettes of their pursuers look down like monsters in the moonlight. Zaki looks back up at them, his face darkening with a history of bad blood. Scar stares down with cold, golden eyes, the leader of the wolves who took everything from him. Carrie stands beside him with a cruel smirk, clearly enjoying the hunt. Seeing those two again brings back a flood of memories Zaki would rather forget. He looks out over the landscape, remembering a time when things were a lot more peaceful. Later, Zaki explains that this territory used to belong to his family before things went south. They were first hit by the Murakotasha pack in a brutal border war that left them weakened. His father took a bad hit in the fighting, and that's when everything truly fell apart. Seeing their chance, the scary pack came down from the mountains to finish the job. Scar and his crew didn't show any mercy as they claimed the land for themselves. Carrie was right in the middle of it, covered in the blood of his kin as she laughed. They slaughtered his father and scattered the rest of his family like they were nothing. After wandering alone for days, Zaki eventually stumbled upon the corpse of his mother. She had been picked clean, leaving nothing but a skeleton in the dirt. He was the only survivor left, howling his heart out in the middle of a storm. Now, he's finally back in his old home, and his only goal is revenge. Yen listens to the tragic story and admits that every wolf in this world carries their own scars. She tells him that if he survived this long, he should probably value his life a little more. Zaki just smiles, telling her that he doesn't plan on being a lone wanderer anymore. He wants to build his own pack, find a mate, and have a family of his own one day. He's going to claim this territory back and grow stronger until he's ready to take them all on. Yen thinks he's being a bit of a fool, but Zaki just brushes her off. He points out that winter is coming and he needs to find a wolf to be his mate sooner rather than later. Then he drops a bombshell, saying there's already a pretty wolf sitting right next to him. A heavy silence falls over the group as they all just sit there in silence. Quetta looks back and forth between them, completely out of the loop on the romantic tension. He just stares blankly, not quite getting what Zaki is implying. Yen's face goes totally red as she tries to find the words to respond. Zaki just casually asks if it's true that she and Quetta aren't actually a couple. Zaki decides to double-check something, leaning in close with a serious look. He bluntly asks Quetta if he actually wants to marry Yen, which just leaves everyone sitting there in a weird silence. Quetta just stares back, completely caught off guard by the sudden question. Yen looks like she wants the ground to swallow her whole, her eyes wide with total shock. After a long pause, Quetta finally tries to find his words. He admits that marriage isn't really something that's ever even crossed his mind. Yen's still frozen in place, her face a mix of confusion and pure embarrassment. Zaki just smirks, telling Quetta he hopes it stays that way because he'd hate to have to fight him over Yen. Suddenly, Zaki's expression shifts as he realizes something else and asks Quetta another question. He asks if Quetta actually liked that thief they met earlier, while Yen looks on with a raised eyebrow. Quetta gets a goofy little smile on his face as he remembers the mysterious silver-haired woman. Yen immediately snaps at him, demanding to know exactly who he met while he was looking for her. Quetta tries to explain that things were just crazy, but Zaki cuts in to remind them she's a goose thief. Yen's glare intensifies, realizing Quetta was busy following another girl's scent instead of finding her. He panics, trying to defend himself by saying he just followed the sounds of a fight. Yen leans in close, her eyes narrowing as she asks the only question that matters, was she pretty? Quetta looks away, admitting that yeah, she actually was pretty good looking. He describes her as having a mature and elegant vibe, which only makes Yen's mood get even worse. He mentions she was tall and had a unique voice, rubbing his chin as he recalls the details. The next thing Quetta knows, he's getting a face full of Yen's hand as she delivers a solid smack. She brushes him off with a look of pure disgust, claiming she's just hungry and out of patience. Yen suddenly stands up and shouts that she's done talking about marriage, she's starving to death. She argues that since there are 3 of them now, they should be more than capable of catching some food. The guys can only look on in shock as she declares they're going hunting for some fresh deer meat right now. Zaki takes the lead as they move out, looking back at them with a serious expression. He notes that since they're in a border region, neither the Murakotasha nor the scary pack should be around to bother them. Zaki mentions he's had his eye on some prey for a while that was just too big to take down alone. Quetta asks if it's an elk, bragging that he once almost caught an elk king all by himself. Zaki gives them a confident smirk, telling them it's something way bigger than just a regular elk. Yen and Quetta both freeze, wondering exactly what kind of monster he's talking about. A small bird watches from the tip of a massive set of antlers. The trio comes face to face with a massive moose that looks like it could crush them without even trying. Yen and Quetta immediately start panicking, wondering how they're supposed to catch something that big. Zaki keeps his cool, telling them that the big one isn't the actual target. He points out the calf standing next to the mother, noting that while the mom is too much, they can definitely take the little one. He reminds them that moving as a team is crucial, especially since they've all been in packs before. The mother moose looks on suspiciously as the group starts to move into position. Zaki declares that as the leader, his role is to deliver the final strike, so the others need to distract the mother. Yen and Quetta aren't having it, both arguing that Zaki should be the one acting as the decoy. Zaki tells them to shut up, questioning if they even know anything about hunting as a pack. He tries to act cool, telling Yen he's going to show her the true charm of a strong male wolf. But as the mother moose starts to close in, Zaki's confidence completely vanishes and he yells at them to go distract her immediately. Zaki looks worriedly at Quetta while Yen dismissively tells him it's fine. The giant mother moose lets out a deafening roar as they approach. Quetta and Yen charge forward as Zaki shouts out his support from behind. Yen and Quetta both look incredibly determined to finally get some food. The mother moose rears up, looming over them like a massive mountain of fur and muscle. Quetta grits his teeth and pushes through the wind as the beast stomps down. Zaki watches the chaos from a safe distance, looking a little unsure about the plan. The plan immediately fails, and Yen screams for Zaki to take his turn as they run for their lives. The moose calf tries to make a break for it as the group scatters. Zaki leaps through the air and manages to sink his teeth into the calf's shoulder. The calf is much stronger than it looks and sends Zaki flying with a single buck. Now it's the calf's turn to hunt, as it chases a terrified Zaki through the trees. Zaki screams in panic, wondering how a baby moose can be this terrifying. He worries that his reputation as an alpha male is about to go right down the drain. Quetta and Yen regroup, with Yen complaining that they should have just let Quetta handle it. They decide on one final all-out charge, letting out a roar as they run toward the moose family. The mother moose isn't impressed and sends them both tumbling into the grass. Zaki takes another direct hit, this time getting kicked right in the face by the calf. The defeated trio beats a hasty retreat as the moose family watches them go from the forest's edge. Zaki shakes his fist at them, promising that he'll be back for a rematch one day. An anthropomorphic image of a young fawn with blood on its cheek, looking up in sheer shock. She is held tightly by a doe mother wearing a long dress, standing in a sunlit forest clearing. Back in reality, Zaki and Quetta try to keep their spirits up by fist bumping. Yen is completely finished, sitting on the ground and groaning about how hungry she is. Zaki promises Yen that he'll find her something to eat, no matter what it takes. Just then, a small rabbit hops right past them, catching Zaki's eye. The three of them immediately sprint after the rabbit, shouting at each other not to let it get away. Yen is so focused on the rabbit that she doesn't see a root and trips, face-planting into the dirt. Zaki and Quetta both dive for the same spot as the rabbit makes a sharp turn. They end up colliding with each other in a painful heap while the rabbit effortlessly hops away. They sit there, bruised and shivering from frustration at their own incompetence. Suddenly, someone else's teeth sink into the rabbit, finishing the hunt they started. It's Shay, the silver-haired woman, and she's already starting on their intended meal. Zaki points an accusing finger at her, immediately recognizing the girl from before. Shay stands up calmly, thanking them for being such good decoys. Zaki is beyond furious, demanding to know if she already ate the entire goose she stole from him. He declares she's dead meat and lunges at her, but Yen is already one step ahead. Yen tackles Shay with a fierce look in her eyes, catching the thief completely by surprise. The two of them tumble through the grass in a chaotic scuffle. Quetta looks on in complete shock as he watches the two girls fight over the rabbit. Yen pins Shay down, her hand around the other girl's neck as she stops her in her tracks. With an icy glare that could freeze fire, Yen warns Shay that the rabbit is hers. Shay remains calm while being pinned, smugly claiming the rabbit belongs to the wolf who caught it. Yen bares her teeth in a growl, threatening Shay not to touch her food. Suddenly, the tables turn as Shay grabs Yen by the throat, cutting off her words. Shay effortlessly flips Yen over, pinning her to the ground while complaining about her constant chirping. With a cold and piercing gaze, Shay dares Yen to try taking the rabbit by force. Before Yen can respond, Shay is struck by a surprise attack from Zaki that sends her tumbling backward. Zaki steps forward, declaring that one rabbit isn't nearly enough to pay back the debt she owes them. Shay quickly recovers, getting back to her feet with a look of intense focus and a small scowl. Yen lets out a feral scream and charges at Shay again, her rage completely boiling over. Quetta suddenly interjects, stepping between the two girls and holding them back with his arms outstretched. With a look of weary concern, Quetta quietly asks his friends to stop fighting. Yen is baffled by Quetta's intervention, demanding to know why he's taking the thief's side. Yen shouts in frustration at Quetta's pacifism while Zaki watches with a bored, unamused expression. Zaki points a finger at the silver-haired girl, still calling her a thief as they all face each other. To everyone's surprise, Quetta turns to Shay and asks her if she wants to hunt with them. Yen is completely shocked by the suggestion, while Zaki tries to rationalize it as forming a proper wolf pack. Zaki smirks to himself, secretly hoping that if the other two pair up, Yen will have no choice but to come to him. Shay shuts down the idea immediately, stating she has no intention of hunting with people who aren't family. She adds a final insult about their inability to catch a single rabbit before turning her back on them. Yen dismissively waves her away, telling her to disappear, as Zaki watches the silver-haired girl leave with a grumpy sigh. Zaki starts talking about the taste of elk meat like he's describing a five-star meal. He goes on about the smell of a fresh kill while the others listen, half horrified and half starving. He describes the feeling of burying your face into the warm carcass, getting really into the details. Yen just stares at him, probably wondering if this guy is actually sane. Quetta is taking it all in, already imagining that hit of adrenaline and flavor. Even the newcomer, Shay, looks like she's starting to reconsider her solo lifestyle for a good meal. Zaki insists that you just can't compare a massive elk to small fry like rabbits or geese. The whole crew suddenly finds themselves sharing a collective daydream of a giant victory feast. Shay's stomach is clearly doing the talking now as she contemplates the offer. She decides to tag along just this once, though Yen isn't exactly rolling out the red carpet. Quetta and Zaki are all for it, but Yen is pretty ticked that they're making pack decisions without her. The silver-haired woman introduces herself as Shay and asks who the hell she's working with. Quetta and Zaki introduce themselves with a grin, while Yen just stands there fuming. Yen gives her a classic tisk, making it very clear she's still not a fan of this arrangement. Things go south immediately during their hunt when Quetta takes a massive hit to the face. A mother moose stomps him into the dirt while the rest of them can only watch in shock. The moose bolts, leaving them empty-handed and Quetta bleeding on the ground. Shay looks at them like they're idiots, asking if they've ever actually caught anything in their lives. Zaki tries to defend his honor by claiming he's a native expert, but Quetta tells him to zip it. Shay tells them they don't have a clue what they're doing and points out all their rookie mistakes. She explains that they aren't pumas and can't just dash out on their own like lone rangers. The trick is herding the prey together until the poor thing is too tired to keep its head up. She singles out Quetta, asking why he's always the first one to rush in and blow all his energy. Getting right in his personal space, she explains that the alpha's job is to wait for the perfect opening. Quetta is stunned by the idea of being an alpha, realizing he's been acting more like a frantic pup. Shay asks if he's actually going to do it right this time, and Zaki wonders if he's got it in him. They give it another shot, this time moving as a unit across the open plains. But Quetta's excitement gets the better of him again, and he charges ahead while Shay screams at him. She tells him to stay focused and quit getting so worked up before the job is done. The sun begins to dip below the horizon as they continue their grueling pursuit. The hunt stretches into a snowy night, with the group relentlessly tracking the elk's trail. It's a long, cold game of patience as they wait for their moment. Finally, the quartet spread out, encircling and closing in from all sides, coordinating perfectly like a true pack of wolves. The elk is at its breaking point, panting and stumbling through the heavy snow. It finally loses its footing, and they know this is the only chance they're getting. They pounce, bringing the massive animal down in a flurry of snow and teeth. Victory is sweet, and very bloody, as they finally secure their long-awaited feast. Quetta and Shay dive in, faces covered in red as they tear into the fresh meat. While the guys were busy stuffing their faces, Yen felt a bit uneasy seeing the two of them so close to each other. Yen immediately shoved her way in, separating the two, and used the excuse that the intestines should be hers. Quetta points her toward the liver, promising her it's the best part of the whole kill. Yen finally digs in, and by the look on her face, she's finally satisfied. Yen digs into her portion, but the group's internal tension hasn't cooled off yet. And just like that, she lunged right back in and bit Shay hard on the head. Quetta tries to play the adult, telling them to knock it off while they've still got food to eat. But the bickering is cut short by a chilling command echoing across the snow. Rip out their innards, the voice says, turning their meal into a nightmare. It's the leader of the scary pack, and he's looking down on them with pure malice. Beside him, Carrie watches the scene unfold with a cold, predatory grin. The entire pack is fanned out across the ridge, leaving the small group with nowhere to hide. Zaki and Quetta can only watch as the order for their execution is barked out. Scar lets out a roar that shakes the very air, signaling the start of the slaughter. His hunters don't hesitate, charging down the hill like a pack of demons. Realizing they're about to be overrun, the group turns and starts a desperate dash for survival. But Quetta halts, pointing back at their hard-earned kill and refusing to let it go. Yen screams at him to forget about the meat if he actually wants to live to see tomorrow. Instead of running, Quetta roars back, calling for his makeshift pack to stand and fight. The rest of them freeze, unable to believe he's actually suggesting they take on an entire pack. He keeps shouting at them to come back, his voice full of a new, dangerous authority. Zaki is the first to turn back, his own hatred for Scar finally outweighing his fear. Even Yen stops, her terror being replaced by a spark of resolve as she looks at her friends. Shay, Quetta, and Zaki drew closer together, facing the oncoming tide as a single unified force. Before they could even get into formation, she saw Shay standing right next to Quetta, and Yen's jealousy flared up, turning her face totally red. She takes her place in the line, and the group prepares for the collision. The scary pack closes the distance in seconds, thirsty for an easy kill. One of the hunters lunges ahead of the rest, aiming straight for Quetta's throat. He thinks he's about to catch a pup, but he's never been more wrong. Quetta moves like lightning, catching the guy mid-air and driving him face first into the earth. The rest of the pack skids to a halt, completely stunned by the sheer violence of the counterattack. Blood sprays as Quetta grinds the guy's face into the dirt, showing zero mercy. With his eyes glowing a primal red, the prey has finally turned into a predator.